Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Sims. Welcome to another Hey Now podcast with my sons Jarrett and Jordan Sims. Coming up, we're going to have a great interview with Bill Burr, but a couple of topical things we want to kick around. I know from my standpoint as one of the broadcasters for the Seattle Mariners coming into the All-Star break right now, Mariners at one point had a 10-game lead. It was down to 2. Houston's coming in to start the second half. That looks like it's going to be a tremendous race, and I know folks in Seattle, they love to boo the Astros. I think people are going to show up, and I think, guys, we're going to have big crowds coming up in Seattle. Even more, we've had good crowds even before the break, but I know after the break, it's really going to be jacked up a little bit more.
I'm obviously pulling for you guys, hoping that the team, closes it out and gets a home playoff series or two. I am wearing a Dusty Baker Family Wines t-shirt. It doesn't mean I'm, rooting for the Astros against you, but shout outs to Dusty, our friend. And I'm excited to be out there with you guys in August for a little family trip, see some games too.
That should be fun. And Jordy, the team comes into the All-Star break. Among I was last or next to last in batting average, but ERA at 3 and keeping the Mariners above Houston, keeping them 2 games up. It's pretty interesting how people are that they're upset, but I keep saying I don't want to go in the air. Hey man, we're still in first place. Still got a ways to go, but we're still in first place.
Yeah. First place is first place. And I saw the videos on social media of Logan Gilbert getting announced as an all-star, and that was pretty cool, calling his family, his teammates giving him some shit. I'm wondering what, in terms of teams going into the second half, how are they positioned health-wise? Who do you think is ripe to start off the second half with a bang?
Well, right now Baltimore's on a good roll in the American League East. The Yankees are fading like crazy. Hopefully they'll pick it back up. We'll see what happens there because that could be a heck of a race. Baltimore's young, talented, and deep. Boston's on the come. They specialize in throwing nothing but spin, man. They're not a fastball pitching team. They spin it, they cut it, they do the whole thing. And Rafi Devers and they got some guys that are swinging it.
Quick aside, when you see it like this out of the hand, it's the red dot when it's
yeah. And if it's if it looks like a circle, it's usually it's a red dot. It's gonna be a fastball. That's right. If you can't recognize it,
you've seen me swing a hot bat, Jordan. I don't know. And I knew the answer. I built a virtual reality thing that helped you figure that out. I was just testing Dad here.
Yeah,
I went 5 for 6 in slow pitch co-ed softball last night with 4 triples. So
let's go.
You know what you know about me.
Playoffs?
Yeah.
Yeah, last night was the first playoff game and we won. So
nice. Well, you got to double back for a second because I only know this because Mom told me the details. You are in a serious relationship with a amazing young woman whose entire family plays rec ball. Like, just tell them.
They do now. I mean, there's a bunch of soccer players, but I was the one who kind of galvanized the softball team. I haven't played softball since intramurals in college, but I just remember. I mean, I loved playing baseball growing up. We always used to watch Dad play softball in Central Park.
Central Park.
So that was a big part of our life.
Played on every softball league there was.
Press league, entertainment league.
With the Broadway actors, right?
Broadway, yep. The restaurant league. It was great. We played a lot.
Who was the best celeb who could play?
The late great.
I know it wasn't Bruce Willis.
No, the late great Jim Jensen, a legendary New York City CBS anchor, was a very good pitcher, and he had Duke Carmel, who played for the Cardinals. I think I know he played for the Cardinals and 1 or 2 other teams. Big left-hand hitter.
He played with Billy Joel softball. No.
No, that wasn't me. But Central Park. We do a whole story on the Central Park softball leagues.
Bette Midler, that's right.
Well, you're thinking of the Seinfeld episode.
Yeah, no, I know.
So that wasn't you. Okay.
No, that definitely wasn't me taking her out at whole play. Hey, basketball, the Olympic team, the Olympic men's basketball team. You guys have been keeping an eye on that. What do you have? What's going on?
Really enjoyed watching this team right now with the A-team winning, LeBron, AD, Drew Holiday, all those guys. Anthony Edwards was the young gun on that squad, but it wasn't nearly as intense as what you see from those clips of Magic and Jordan and those guys going at each other, shit talking each other.
All right,
the level of talent is there, but it was just not the same intensity. Much as I
get you a TNT desk job with that with that statement.
I'm here for it. I'm
These
ready.
young guys don't play hard, but from what I saw, they were going pretty hard. At least when you compare it to all other exhibitions in terms of the All-Star game, when there's just like I don't even know what to call that. It's not even a pickup game, but they were going relatively hard, I thought, and it was cool seeing these. They were playing against the select team with Cooper Flag was playing it, the kid who's going to Duke next year. So I saw his shit get swatted by AD, and then he got it back and scored. Everyone was making such a huge deal out of it that he got it back, but that's got it for him. That's got to be the legit the coolest thing ever to play against some of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
And while you're 17 and still in high school, that's nuts. But
That's
I'm
totally
super
nuts.
excited. Yeah, super excited to watch the team this year. There's a lot of good teams, international teams. You got France with Wembanyama and Gobert. That's just kind of interesting to watch.
A lot
just,
of size. A
yeah,
lot of size. Man, oh man.
A lot.
Derek White taking over the spot for Kawhi. What do you think about that, Jordan?
They could put you in there, and we're still getting the gold.
Now we're getting too honest. We're getting too honest
Well,
with people. I am a slasher, everybody. My jump shot is a little shaky. Jordan is the one who tickles the
well, I'm excited that Steph is playing in this Olympics, and I had the opportunity, Dad. You hooked me up with Coach K. This was 10 years ago already, which is nuts. But I got to watch the USA team practice for the FIBA World Championships back in 2014 at the New York Health and Racket Club in the Essex building. Yeah. So Curry,
New York AC,
AD,
New York. It was the New York AC
Athletic Club. Yeah. So Curry was there, AD, Clay, and it was just Thibodeau was running the practice, and it was just awesome to watch. They were running all these sets where just Curry got the ball coming off of like a screen, at the 3-point line, just shooting at that 3-point line is legit a layup for him at the international level. So
you mentioned Tibbs, Jordy, and with the Nova Knicks now, I would say it's not exactly complete. It's only a matter of time before we have somebody as a new coach of the Knicks to just make it complete. Is Jay Wright going to coach the Knicks?
I really don't see that happening. I
Kerry
really
Kittle.
don't.
We need to get Kerry Kittles and Alvin Williams on the staff.
Those were your guys when we take you to Villanova games.
Where's Ed Pinkney coaching? He can come back.
Folks, they became big Villanova fans because I did a ton of Nova games in the early 90s when Steve Lapis was there and Paul Hewitt and all the fellas. Hey, listen, we saw Bill Burr, who's our guest on today's episode. We saw him a couple of weeks ago. Jordy and I did. And it was great to see the full house at the Moore Theater in Seattle, which was built in 1907. My goodness, we were way up top. But I thought Bill was great. We thoroughly enjoyed it. And he had his crew, doing HBO specials. And they had folks doing Man in the Street. And as we're walking up, we run into a crew, one of the camera guys, and Jordy jumped in.
I heard, wait. Double back that. I heard you big league. What are you doing? Our friend Bill Burr. They were like, Dave, you want to? And you're like, talk to Jordan.
No. I wasn't going to do that.
That's how
one of the camera guys, he said, you don't want it. You're not Man in the Street. That was like that time we met Pete Rose a few years ago. And he said,
so he was giving you props.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay. Yeah, it was a camera guy. I know like a million camera guys. Yo, what up? Hey, what's happening? Yeah, no, it was all good. Jordy did a little thing.
What did you say, Jordan?
The only thing I remember is it was weird because the guy was just looking at me like expecting me to talk. I was like, I don't know. I didn't even know they were rolling.
He's funny.
I just said I was a fan for a long time, for like damn near 20 years, and that I think I said I'm looking forward to him giving shit to all the Seattleites in the crowd. So
ouch.
I'm pretty sure
tough room. Oh, shots fired.
And he did.
We really enjoyed seeing Bill in concert a couple of weeks ago, and we're delighted to bring him to you right now here in the Hey Now podcast. Without any further ado, here is Bill Burr. Bill Burr joins us on the show, a guy we've liked over the years. We've seen him a lot, seen him in person. In fact, Bill, we met back in 2014 at the Pro Bowl. It was a luau. Another time that we saw you, you did a routine about being in Manhattan and going up to see your now wife. And I want to get into your origins, but that particular story just jumped out at me because Jarrett and I were watching, and you talked about, I'm up in 96th Street, Manhattan, then up to 108th Street, then it's Danny Glover Boulevard, and then it's Adam. And And I'm thinking, and I've been in a situation, I've been the lone black guy in too many situations. So I could almost relate to your situation as being the only white guy going up into Harlem, to hang out.
Yeah, we
Not
don't
that,
experience that a lot because most stuff is just sort of all white, So to actually, experience that. I mean, I did that mainly on like comedy shows at first, but yeah, the only other time I've ever felt like that, I did gigs in Asia. And when I went over to Asia, I felt like it's like I went to a completely different earth, but it was just, they had all the same stuff we had, but it was all different. Different airlines, different pop stars, different Real Housewives or whatever, you know what I mean? You'd be like watching like a TV show going, did we steal this for them or did they rip it off from us or whatever? But it was like, it's like everything was familiar, but I knew nothing.
yeah.
So
But you saw Coke signs and
time,
whatnot. You saw Coca-Cola signs and you felt like you were at home. Maybe that was it, right?
Was an incredible experience. So the first time I did that as a white dude with black people would be there was this comedy club, the Boston Comedy Club.
Wow.
And I was palling around with Patrice because all the club owners wanted to sign for Patrice. I was just another white guy that grew up in a cul-de-sac, so they looked at me like I was Patrice's friend, I was introverted and not interesting, but he was like, Patrice was the exact opposite of what these white club owners thought he was going to be. They thought he was going to be like this Def Jam sort of style thing. And then he came in there and was how he was. And then they still didn't get him. I remember they used to just look at him and be like, oh, Patrice. I mean, perfect name. That's the sitcom right there. I mean, imagine Patrice in a sitcom. Like, that's how much they didn't get him. But anyway, so they were trying to show him how antiquated they were with black people. So they invited him to, I swear to God, Puff Daddy had a birthday party at Caroline's. I remember Heavy D was there, Method Man, all of these rappers and all of that, and I was like the only white guy up against the wall. A couple of the Knicks were there, and I remember Ed Lover hosted it, and it was probably the first time I felt like that, and it was it was uncomfortable. I never felt like it was different than just being the only redhead in the room. Put it that way.
Way different, dude. No question about it. I mean, and these guys. I mean, we'll get right into it right now. I mean, Jarrett and Jordy, they're biracial kids, black and Jewish, living in Manhattan. So you have a similar situation. Married to a black woman, you got a couple of kids. There's certain things that I've had to teach them. I was just wondering from your perspective. I mean, your kids are still young. What, 5 or less? 5 or younger?
Yeah, no, like 7 and 4.
Get all the time before they become teenagers. Get it all in.
What do you think?
My daughter's already kind of doing like, when she wakes up grumpy and her eyebrows are down, I don't even say good morning to her. I let her finish waking up, and then I give her breakfast, and then she'll say thanks, and then she gradually warms up, and savory or sugary breakfast, whatever it is, gets them going a little bit, and then it becomes silly time. But I know better than to say hello to her when she has a certain look on her face.
Just curious what your approach is going to be. I had to teach these guys, the driving while black, that whole thing, and the Jarrett wanted to go out running.
I got a funny story about that.
What do you got?
I was talking to my brother-in-law, okay, and he was talking about how he was driving across the country. So I start talking to him like he's a white guy. I'm like, you got to do a little Route 66. And, and then my wife was in the background. She goes, he's driving across country. And she grabbed the phone from me. She goes, only drive during the day, stay on the highway, and blah, 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 blah. And it was like something that a bunch of white people should have seen. They still wouldn't get it. They'd still blame you guys because that's what abusive people do. They blame the abuse. But some of them would get it, be like, wow, this guy is literally an American. And like one of the big American things to do, at least with white people at some point, is to drive cross country and see this beautiful land. And you're driving across this country that's supposed to be yours too. And you have to stay on the highway and only drive during the day and drive the speed limit because you could possibly get pulled over and get shot to death for driving across country. And it was just something I never forgot that. And I was like, So when it comes to my kids with stuff like that, I'm the color commentator, no pun intended. I let her lead. She leads it because she's gonna know better than me and everything. But then where I come in to fill in the cracks is I'm good at like reading people and everything and just sort of making like I tell her, kids say mean stuff to her, and it's like, you know what it is? It's like you're a happy, positive kid. And when negative people see that, they want to say something to you that makes you feel the way that they do. Okay. And you don't have to listen to it. And I literally tell them to go F themselves. I don't care if you get in trouble. If they push you, punch them as hard as you can, right in the nose. I probably shouldn't be saying this on a podcast. And
hey, you're talking the truth, pal. Come on.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's just because those early years, it as far as like the brain developing, a part of it is like, am I going to be the person that just accepts taking shit in life? Or am I going to be somebody that sticks up for themselves? So sticking up for yourself at school, for the most part, is a safe place to do it because it is a controlled environment. Someone's going to come in and break it up pretty quickly, hopefully. So, I just sort of, I already let her know, like most of these, you're going to have like 3 friends you're going to stay in contact with probably for the rest of your life. These other kids, they're just their background. Like, It doesn't matter what they think. And what's funny is you're going to see them at a reunion one day and they're going to walk up to you like you were best friends if you're doing well in life. That's basically it. And then no one knows what happens when you die. All these religions, they're basically guessing. They all have their Santa Claus, and just be a good person. Don't take any crap. Like I do that. But my wife gets into all of the race stuff. I let her handle that stuff, and I sit there and listen. I learn stuff too,
and it's real. I mean, my guys. Go ahead. You guys learned.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, Bill, if was this wisdom that was imparted on you when you were a kid in terms of sticking up for yourself and at school? I know you've talked about being, I think, on your podcast about being like scared, kind of being at school. Is that correct? Like as a young kid, there
was certain
kind
environments. I was an in the middle kid. So some classes I felt comfortable in, others I didn't. Some kids I felt comfortable around. I was like background or something like that. But no, I took a lot of crap growing up because that's kind of how I learned at home.
Mm-hmm.
My parents had like an old school relationship where my dad came home like Fred Flintstone and the dinner had to be ready and he'd blow his stack. There was never any apologies or whatever. My dad's a good guy and everything. He just grew up in a different generation and he advanced the ball.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. But like I did learn, the relationship I saw, like one person was calling the shots and the other person, had to accept it or do like passive aggressive ways to get what they wanted. It wasn't, by nowadays standards, it wasn't healthy. But back then it was typical. What I just can't believe is how much we've let education slide.
Oh,
public education and everything. It's like, if we're not careful, if we keep going this corporate route where we keep, I don't know what, for profit's sake or whatever, the Ponzi scheme, whatever the hell it is, it's like we are going to have way more dummies than we're going to have smart people. And it used to be like I don't know. I feel like the older generations, like reading and doing crossword puzzles and being smart was like it held some sort of value. Where, like, I don't know. I always joke in my act like the tipping point in this country was Dress Down Fridays. That's when we took our foot off the gas. We just started to become lax or whatever, and now
I don't care anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, like, dude, I tell you what's funny. I was joking with a buddy of mine. I always watch the Rockford Files, this old show.
Oh, sure. James Garner. It was a great show.
Yeah, and James Garner would get a beat down every single show. I mean, but what killed me was back then, like, the bad guys wore suits. I mean, they looked like they were chaperoning like a semi-formal, and they'd be in an abandoned warehouse, like just stomping the hell out of James Garner. And then somewhere along the line, the suit became the tracksuit. And I'm trying to think when that happened. I want to say maybe Henry Hill in Goodfellas when he drove around in the Cadillac looking up at the helicopter. I think he had on a tracksuit that day. So, I mean, even the gangsters back in the day used to dress, had a little bit. Hey, you're going to work. Put a suit on.
Yeah.
Oh no, they look good with the big hats and everything. Yeah, that's good stuff. Hey, Bill, you were talking about your youth, and I'm curious, the state, where you are in your life right now. Comedian, actor, producer, drummer. You still a pilot too? You still flying planes?
Yeah, I flew yesterday. I had a great flight yesterday.
Good for you. What are you flying? Not that I know
fly
a hell of a lot about it.
A helicopter. I got a little two-seater. Eventually, I don't know. I would like to sort of trade my way up by, it's once you get in the game, once you own a little two-seater, then you can get a little better two-seater, then a four-seater, and then work up to something heavier. But it's just so much friggin' money. Like, what I like about flying my little one, I mean, 60, 80 bucks, I can cruise around and I'm good. You move up to something that's like a turbine engine. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's like every time you fly, it's like 300 bucks. And then forget about the maintenance. That's like, you got to have like startup money to do that. Or you got to go halfway with somebody else. And then you don't know how they're flying it. And there's no way to pre-flight check like metal fatigue. So that freaks me out. So I like
well it should.
Yeah.
As well
I
it
don't
should.
like that.
So I got 6 hours as for my pilot's license for planes. My wife got me as a birthday present. Why helicopters over planes?
I was just looking at the dollar, Woodrow Wilson, the Federal Reserve, corporations running our foreign policy. I was looking at that stuff and I started getting super paranoid. And I was thinking, man, if the dollar collapsed, what would happen in LA? How would I get out of here? And it's like, even when the dollar is working, it takes 6 hours. I feel like not 6 hours, but 3 hours just to drive out of here.
Hey, Bill, to get to this point, I'm curious about your early beginnings, man, because you got a hell of a life working there and you started from humble beginnings. How did comedy become, the turning point? I mean, that's the road I want to go down. How'd that happen?
Well, I was failing at everything else. And, but I always like funny movies. I like funny movies. And I also like badass guys like Lee Marvin. And that's sort of what I grew up on. I either wanted to laugh or I wanted to see that guy with the cool car that could beat up 4 guys and have the beautiful woman, That's why I still watch those old shows. Kojak, Rockford Files. Yeah. I love all of that stuff, right? Because back then they didn't. Somewhere along the line, nerds started controlling the narrative of a guy like that, and they just sort of turned him into Ron Burgundy, who I love, but then they just made every guy out there, like being a guy, like you see these commercials where if a guy's really manly, they mock it. You know what I mean? Like he's a lumberjack and he's hanging out with a bear and it's all absurd. And it goes back to these nerds. They can't handle that there's guys out there, that there's guys that just walk into the bar and all the pretty women just sense that the dude's there, And back in the day, guys like me, you'd be a fan of a guy like that. Go, look at that guy, man. He's the man. And somewhere along the line, the nerd resentment turned that guy into this joke. So I like watching all that stuff back then. So I was watching comedies and everything. And then I got into stand-up and it was obviously, I wanted to do it the way I wanted to be in the NFL, but it didn't seem like it was possible because.
What do you mean? Like it is in the NFL? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, as a little kid, you watch the NFL and you're like, oh, I want to be in the NFL. And stand-up comedy, I'm saying like that, how far away the NFL dream was.
Gotcha.
Stand-up was just as far away because there wasn't the internet or anything like that. So I had no idea. There was a huge stand-up scene in Boston. I thought in order to become a comedian, you had to move to Hollywood or
or New York.
I didn't even think New York. I didn't even know that New York necessarily had a scene, even though I was watching a lot of stand-up that was taped there. But
without a doubt, with Tonight Show.
I just thought it was all within a mile radius of Johnny Carson in Burbank. So I was working in a warehouse and another guy in there who's just as funny as me, he would be watching stand up like me. And he said one day watching, one of these stand-up shows. He was going, Bill, we're funnier than these guys, you know, because it was towards the end of the 80s where they were just throwing anybody on TV. And he said, one of these days I'm going to take a shot at Jack Daniels and walk on stage. I'll never forget that. And then all of a sudden, doing it wasn't on TV a million miles away. It was sitting next to me. I was thinking like, oh, you can just do that? And I was like, in that moment, I made the decision that I was going to do it, but it still took me another 2 years before I figured out. I was trying to get through college, and which I didn't even want to do. But my parents were old school. They're like, you need a college degree, and all that stuff, you know. So, and you know, we didn't have like money for college education, so I was working my way through college part time. It was, I mean, I didn't walk until I was 25. It was awful.
Wow.
So, but I started stand up when I was like 24, and I just signed up for a talent contest. And
what'd you talk about? I mean, you're 24 years old. You haven't lived life yet. And
yeah, I talked about being a loser and commuting and having no friends and being alone, just sort of making fun of myself. I had massive depression issues, anger issues, and all that. All that came out later in my late 20s and 30s. In my 40s, I started to realize how messed up I was. And then a couple of mushroom trips straightened me out, you know, figured myself out. I like to think I'm a better person. Although the wife, you know, still lets me know the things I need to work on, you know.
Jordan has some ayahuasca experience in Costa Rica that, you know, found out some things about himself. Did you ever have any visions of sort of from the mushrooms experience that sort of looking back, or was it looking forward? Was it?
Oh no, it was back and right now. Like
wow.
I started tripping a little bit, and then all of a sudden this profound sense of loneliness, like bottomless. It wasn't even there wasn't even a top and bottom, it just was. And I was trying to figure out what it was. And I'm like, is there something going on with me and my wife? So I checked in, you know, you check in, right? And I'm like, no, we're cool. My kids, I know we're cool with that. What is, and then I finally was just like, when I relaxed and said, all right, to the universe, what is this? The bad trip went away. And then the answer came, and it was like, this is how I felt growing up. And I grew up in a house where it was like, you know, just volatile. There was like, you know, my dad was old school. He like with my mom, we wouldn't let her hug or kiss us because he thought it would make us gay. You know, that's the way he grew up.
Wow.
So you just sort of grow up. So I thought growing up, I thought I was tough. And I liked that I didn't need anything or anybody. But I didn't realize that I was actually really sad about that, you know, that little 4-year-old boy in me needed that. And like I used to pride myself on how alone I could be doing like college gigs, and like I would like not talk to anybody until I went in to do the show that night, just driving by myself. And it didn't bother me at all, but I was really just completely walled off. So I kind of realized so much stuff. It's like, oh, all right, I didn't do stand-up because I loved comedy. I actually figured out the reason I did stand-up was because that was the easiest way to go into a room full of strangers, make them all like me so no one would hurt me. I literally went on stage as a 6-year-old and had no idea for like 20 years. I just thought I like comedy. I liked Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Cheech and Chong and Lily Tomlin and all these people I saw growing up. I thought that that's what it was. And it was like, no, I was depressed. I was lonely. I was sad. I was a little boy that needed a hug, never got it. And like all of that sad stuff that makes you, that gives you this, it's weird. It ends up giving you this drive, you know, to start a business, to do stand up, to go after something, to make a name for yourself. And what you're really trying to do, I don't know, I'm probably oversimplifying it or just superimposing my experience, was just like, I was just trying to accomplish something so I could stop feeling about myself how I felt.
Wow.
So that's really what it was. It had nothing to do. And that's also why when the first, whatever, I would say 8-9 years of my career, my entire self-esteem was based on how my last set went.
Wow.
Like if I had a good set, it was weird. If I had a good set, I felt good about myself for like the rest of the night. And then the next day, like I call it the fog, would start coming in. But if I had a bad set,
How long would that last?
I wouldn't feel good about myself until like the next, like hopefully I'd have a set later on that night or like the next day. But if I didn't have a set for a couple of days, I was, I had to talk myself out of this and get, once I got that first laugh, I would feel good again. But it's like, but even like killing as a comedian never filled me up because it's not like a real thing. It's like this fleeting sort of thing. Cause like the audience, you kill, the audience laugh, they air quote, love you. And then the show's over and then they go home.
Right. And you gotta live your life.
Then you're sitting there by yourself, usually with some other damaged kid drinking, or you meet some crazy woman or whatever and she didn't get hugs, and then you like trauma bond or whatever. It was just that.
Wow.
But it was fun. I mean, it was like going on the road and doing all that stuff was fun. But I will say, understanding myself now is and understanding why I do some of the things that I do has definitely made me a happier person. Good. Hopefully a better husband, and definitely like a better father. So yeah, but believe me, this is it's going to be my life's work. I'll never undo it, but fully. But I feel like I made major strides with my kids because my kids are not afraid of me at all. And, they know when I'm serious, but like, my daughter told me the other time, she wanted to play a game and I was joking around. Why do you want to go, play a board game with me? And she goes, cause you're the fun dad. And I go, you think I'm a fun dad? She goes, yeah. I go, why? She goes, you always play with us. You're funny, you're silly, and blah, 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 blah. So that made me feel like I can't explain the feeling of like breaking that, that shut down thing.
Yeah.
And I have empathy for my parents because, they grew up, they were born in the 40s. So their parents went through the Depression. They went through 2 world wars. One as a child, one they had to fight in or whatever, and, there wasn't a lot of time for people's feelings back then. They used to like PTSD, shell shocked, as Carlin said.
Right.
They used to, I remember seeing that Ken Burns' The War, and this woman was explaining some of the veterans that killed themselves, and she said, they couldn't shake off the war. That was therapy. Shake it off.
Yeah. Shake it off. And that's why so many of those guys never talked about it too. The one, that other group, the other participants.
Yeah. So
did you feel that way, Dad? With your dad? Did you feel?
I tell you what, he was not a hugger, but like first time I got in grade school, first time I was an altar boy at like a 6:30 master call, and I'm serving a mass, and I turn around, he was there, blew me away. He made all my games, damn near all my games, even when I was in college. But he wasn't a hugger, but you knew he was down with it, And
yeah, that thing was more like their action. They didn't tell you, they showed you.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. That's exactly right. And my mom she wasn't even a hugger, but, and Bill, my wife and I, we were huggers from day one. Matter of fact, when I met my wife, her family was big huggers. So then it became part of me now. And, especially having these guys, but and that was a big change, man. But other than that, my household was, it was close. My brother and I, and about, middle class, black family, striving, trying to get up, that whole thing. And that was my deal. And
what's funny about my upbringing is my parents were white collar, but we grew up in a blue collar town because we got in over our head in a house and there was a bubble and it burst. So we ended up losing the house. Then we moved to this town, but it ended up being a great thing because I got sort of like, I had my parents at home going, stressing education, which is funny because I still did horrible in it. So I had that experience living with professionals. And then all of my friends, they were all, for the most part, were blue collar. I had a few white collar friends, but it was mainly a blue collar town.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff I loved the most, I like more the way blue collar people were social.
Meaning what?
Well, I felt there was more, like, my parents were more like introverted, sort of stayed to themselves.
Got you.
I'm not saying that's a white collar thing, but like the blue collar people, there was more, I don't know, in a lot of ways, some of them seemed like bigger kids. Like they were just funny. They were telling stories. They were joking around. And there was a while there too, but then there was other things that I found out later that maybe weren't that good. Like my parents weren't big drinkers. And I remember like my buddies, like by the time they were 7, could have got like a job as a bartender, because it's like you had like a kid, and like blue collar families, like one of the first things you did with your kid, other than teach him how to throw a ball, ride a bike, then you taught him how to make your favorite drink so you wouldn't have to get up. And I was hanging with one of my buddies out in Vegas recently. We went to that Patriots Raiders game where we lost it in the end. They called it the Las Vegas lobotomy is what the Patriots fans called that game. He was talking to me about that. He goes, "Oh yeah, dude." He goes, "Cape Cod, vodka Collins. What do you need?" He knew how to make a Manhattan. He knew how to make a Manhattan by the time he was 7. But what I learned about that was those were the kids that started drinking earlier and getting into trouble. And some of them corrected it, and others, it became like an issue. And then they didn't end up maybe getting into the college. I mean, it all worked out for everybody. Wow. But I think, my parents, like being more like I never saw them drink. I never saw them smoke, but my child brain, when I saw like my buddies' parents like drinking and watching like a Bruins game, I was thinking like, oh, this is the kind of parent I'm going to be. I'm just going to be hanging out, and this is like a big party. But it was that classic kid thing. Like, I'm literally stepping into your life for a hockey game and then making all these assumptions about what it's like you guys don't have any problems. Obviously they did. But now that I'm a parent, like, my daughter was like a year and a half old, and I said, I stopped drinking. I'm just like, I just don't want them to see that. They have seen me smoke some cigars. I'm not going to lie to you, but I try to watch that too. But, I had a really, that white collar, blue collar thing. I feel like I was able to pull out the best of both, because, I really, I really, there's no way to describe like what it was like back in the day when I was coming up, when me and all of my friends were going in to go to a Bruins game at the old Boston Garden. Before they had all those basketball and hockey arenas, they all look the same now, but each one had like their personality, and you were hanging like right out over the ice. It was I would have to say the Bruins games were my favorite. I mean, I had season tickets to the Patriots and everything like that. That was usually just like, I swear to God, it was like it was the original Survivor back then.
And this was like
it was a bad team. We had that bad stadium, and then as the season wore on, it would get so cold that it was literally like, what am I doing this? Like once every other Sunday, I just sit outside, freeze my ass off, and I watch this 5-11 team or 2-14. We had a few like playoff years or whatever, but we had the 85 team. We finally beat the Dolphins or anything, but I had seasons in 89, and that was a tough year.
You dumped all over Philly, and I loved it for 10 minutes. Dad's from Philly. We grew up going to games. I'm an Eagles fan. I got
Flyers fan, pal.
So that was actually love. You were showing them love.
Well, yeah, and also like to this day, I think my favorite basketball team of all time is the '83 Sixers, who I would put up against. I would put them up against the '96 Bulls. This whole foregone conclusion, like you're telling me the Showtime Lakers. First of all, if you go underneath with the '96 Bulls, you either have Moses Malone or Kareem going up against Luke Longley. I'll take that all day.
And Bill Wennington.
And Bill Wennington, right? Yeah.
Or almost matched whatever Jordan was doing, same way Dr. J could. And we all know if Andrew Toney heated up.
Andrew Toney. It was good. Hey,
yeah.
The year you guys were doing Beat LA, I was at the Daily News here in New York, and I was covering that. And the year before, remember, the Celtics were down 1-3, come back and beat them. I remember writing a column that next year. I said the Sixers are going to find a way, yada, 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 and they did. And that's when the Beat LA thing came out. But
you remember the cover of Sports Illustrated? It said Julius Jams Jinx, and it was him in the Garden dunking on somebody.
There's one, and I think that's a series. There's the SI picture. I think the picture you're talking about. I'm in the background. I'm one of the media guys, the print newspaper reporters, and I'm like, he's dunking on Larry. Comes in one of the Statue of Liberty things.
Yeah. I will tell you what's BS is all these years where they said Dr. J beat up Larry Bird. You had two guys holding his arms. That was a bad one.
I just saw that tape. You're right. You know what? I have to give you that one. I have to, because I don't know.
That was like right out of the WWF.
Right.
I will say Dr. J showed some restraint. He only threw jabs, if I remember.
Yeah. He left jab. So, hey, he's from Long Island, and Philly's the home of the left jab. You know, so
you know what? I actually have a pair of Converse Dr. J's that I'm saving for the next time I do Philly, and that's my little nod to that team. I love, and also like the Sixers, that warm up jersey that they had, that pullover with the big ball, the blue one. That's one of the sickest things. Like if Mitchell and Ness put that out again, even as a Celtics fan, I would. I
know a guy.
I have to get that, man. It's just too cool.
Dad, real quick on that front, Bill. I gotta tell you, since Chappelle bought me an O'Doul's because I was wearing a Sixers jersey. This was back when hip hop had white tees, and I was wearing a do-rag. I got no hair now. I had straight hair.
Right.
I was wearing
a comedy seller.
Yeah, exactly. And I hear a guy go, $5 comedy, $5. I said, who's playing? He goes, Dave Chappelle. And it was season 2. And I'm like, yeah, right. He goes, seriously. So I go downstairs, and Chappelle goes, I don't want to mess with you guys, but you guys are just like some niggas that show up late. And then I was like, ha, ha, ha. Then I sit down, and he goes, I don't want to mess with you guys. I was with a guy who's like 6'5", 3 bills. He's like, you know what? I'm going to get you a beer. And he goes, oh, wait a minute. You guys look like you're like 17. Get him an O'Doul's.
Yeah, that was a fun time. That was like probably late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Exactly. Yes.
That was one of my favorite times in my stand-up career, because by then I was in at the clubs in New York.
Nice.
So I was doing spots, and I was starting to do, B rooms, close those out on the road. And I was doing what they used to call the black rooms, the uptown rooms. I never understood that, uptown. So the urban shows or whatever. So I started to do those, and that was like a big deal, all the Mitchell and Ness stuff. But I knew, because I used to see other white guys go in there, and they would have like, the Rockaware on or whatever, stuff like that. And I'm like, that's not what you want to do. You want to go in, you want to steer into your whiteness. You want to keep it real the other way. So I would go in, I would wear my Bruins t-shirt or whatever, going up looking white as hell. And then the deal with the black room is all about, once you get that first laugh as the white guy, then you become like, you get like extra, it's actually easier as the white guy. Like, black comics have a harder time in a black room than a white comic. White comic, the hardest thing is walking to the stage. Everyone thinks you're not going to be funny. But once you get that first laugh, then you get like extra laughs. Like, you feel like the mascot, like, oh, isn't this quaint? This white guy's making me laugh. And then I would watch like the black comics after me have to be like flipping over stools just to keep their attentions, and they didn't care. And then I'd go down the cellar, and it'd be a white crowd. It was the exact opposite thing. Like a black comic would come on stage like, oh, is he going to beatbox? Oh my God, this is fucking magical, right? And you go on as a white comic, and literally white people be like, white comics aren't as good. And they used to piss me off, because I'd be like, I'm better than that guy. What are you talking about? You're just you're just that white guy that moved to New York, and now you're trying to act like you're from Brooklyn, and you're not. You're me. You grew up in a cul-de-sac with me. So there was all of that type of stuff was happening then. And I remember Jay-Z did some sort of rap about how he was a man and he was too old to wear jerseys, and then they all went away like overnight.
That's Peter Capolino, who my dad was just talking about, who started Mitchell and Ness, and he was telling us his story. He goes, Jay-Z had this line, "I don't wear jerseys. I'm 30 plus. Give me a fresh pair of jeans, right, button-ups," and his business he would have sold for 400 or so million, sold for 33 million after that one line, as he tells.
Oh yeah,
unreal.
No, that's right up there with when Oprah said something about red meat and all those ranchers had to sue her because nobody was buying burgers for like
market collapsed. Oh
yeah.
God. Hey, who was a guy like in baseball for me? Willie Mays, football, Jim Brown, Wilt. Who was your comedy guy that was like, damn, that's I want to get in that neighborhood?
Well, I mean, to get in that, it's never going to happen. But the Jordan was definitely Richard Pryor.
Okay.
And there was just something about everything that he did. Like what I loved about the way when he would tell my people the truth of his experience,
right,
he had a way of doing it that made you laugh at yourself so you could actually listen to what he was saying. And I noticed by the time it got to like the later seasons of Def Jam, it was when I would watch that as a white guy, I would listen to the comic on stage and I'd be like, this guy doesn't like me. So that would put you in a defensive mode. So then you couldn't hear what he was saying anymore. But in defense of the Def Jam comics, that was also post, the crack 80s, which you now find, with the declassification that the CIA was pumping the drugs into those neighborhoods and everything. And I just love how when that just becomes declassified, it's like, all right. and then when you start talking about Banks, they go, he's got his tin foil hat on. It's like, do you think like all of that stuff just ended like back then? It's like, I don't know. Anyway, so it was definitely Richard Pryor. Guys I mentioned, George Carlin, Sam Kinison. Like, I liked people that had like balls, and I liked people that took you on a ride, that weren't trying to ingratiate themselves with the crowd, that like you just, whether you liked it or not, I just felt like they were saying what they wanted to say. I loved that. And then on the whole other side, I just loved silly. So I loved everything from like Steve Martin. I thought was like, I just loved the silliness of what he was doing. Of course, no, I can't. Like, this always happens to me. I always have all these examples until I get asked. But like, I mean, I love. It's why I love Will Ferrell.
Silly, yeah,
silly stuff like that. Well, one of my favorite things is somebody super smart being silly. It's like I am just 100% in. If I'm hanging out with somebody like that, or if I'm watching something that they made, is just like a real fun thing. But like, I also like Seinfeld, like just like a technician or something like that. It's almost like baseball, where some guys are just up there like hitting for average, spraying it all over the field, and then you have the home run hitters,
right?
So I was kind of a fan of all of that.
Hey Bill, can we talk about your new movie Unfrosted?
Yeah, but acting was something I had to learn how to do, just like stand-up. It's not like I got good at stand-up and then I just transferred all of that over to acting. I had to get, I mean, the way I'm wired is whenever I'm trying something new, I have to start at first base. I'm not one of these guys going, all right, I just ran the bases doing this, I'm going to start on home plate. I have a tremendous amount of respect for acting, and I just now think I'm starting to get halfway decent at it. But I learned a ton doing Old Dads, and
good stuff.
I was very happy with the way that performed. And we're right now, me and my writing partner Ben Tischer, we're writing another movie that we're going to be shooting probably next year. But I exist in a weird place in entertainment where I feel like in like Los Angeles and New York views me one way and the rest of the country views me another way.
Explain. What do you mean?
Well, the rest of the country thinks I'm funny. But when I'm out here, there's just a lot of hemming and hawing and not, I mean, if it was up to me, there's a lot of that stuff because we're in this, like every other industry, there's this robber baron era that we're in right now with the technology. And there's a small amount of people that are running wild with it. And they're saying this bullshit that this business is shrinking. It's like, it's not shrinking. More content than ever is being consumed. I'm watching people in crosswalks still looking at their phone, risking their lives, driving down the street with kids in the car, viewing content. So it's not that. What's shrinking is the profit sharing, just like in every other industry. Like I had this talk with somebody one time on a streaming service, and they were going, okay, your thing did this amount of numbers. And I go, all right, how would I know that? How about you have all the information? I have no information. How would I know that? And I go, what's to prevent you from telling me it did half what it really did? He goes, well, I would get in trouble with fraud. I go, by who? Nobody is watching you. They're afraid to make a mistake because they'll lose their job. And there's not really another place that you can necessarily go to if they're all playing this game of taking 8 people and making them 4. So what I do is when me and Ben write our things, we write it the way people talk.
Right.
And the way people talk is potentially something that could upset 0.3% of 1% on Twitter. And these corporate lawyers are in Chicken Little mode and they act like the sky is falling and it isn't. Because old dads, like I went all around town, me and Ben went all around town trying to sell that, couldn't get anybody to do it. Finally, Bill Block, Andrew Golub, those guys over at Miramax, they took a chance on us. And it went on Netflix and it absolutely crushed. It was number one globally 2 weekends in a row and did 50 million streams. So when we came back around to pitch again, I'm thinking they're going to be all about it. And they weren't.
Wow.
Really?
They weren't. It was all just like, okay, well, we'll see. And I was just
Bill,
wow.
Is that to do a next film or to do a sequel?
To do another film. And then they started like negotiating like the last one never happened. Jeez. So that's when I understood the precariousness of the people's position over there that have offices that at any point, it's just easier for them to say no and hang on to the desk than to actually roll the dice. So I've kind of realized that what I have to do to get my stuff made is I need to get out to the other 46 states.
All right, go get it.
I just need something that's going to get me out there. No, I live in a dual reality. When I go on the road, I'm selling all of these tickets. But when I'm out here, it's like I just moved to town. Well, and I'm not taking it personally because everybody is kind of in that boat, including the suits that I'm talking to, where when they're going around to get jobs, they don't care that you ran a network. They don't care about it's this and like everything. There's a small amount of people that push the direction of this country, Democrats and Republicans. And out here, there's a small amount of people that move and shake this whole business. So there's sort of this thing now. I think if you're someone like me, you have to find like a new creative way to just make the things that you want to make. And, and if there is less money, there's less money, whatever. But the way I look at it is my favorite thing about Old Dads is when we did a screening in New York City.
Right.
And, New York, you get everybody.
Absolutely.
Black, white, Puerto Rican, Jewish, the whole thing, right? And what I loved was there was people there that they said we like this movie because it's real. Like Jack, like the character I was playing is like a real guy. So like, what we were trying to make with the character I did was a person. Where if you fast forward through the movie, anytime you hit stop, if you watch my character, you might be like, this guy's an asshole. Or I like this guy. This guy's right.
I watched it. I was like, I know this guy. I feel like this is a buddy of mine.
And then the
camaraderie that you and Bobby and Bokeem Woodbine had, I thought was also like what I have with some of my friends. I thought that was an awesome part of the movie.
And I was making it, some of the scenes I was thinking, I might get a little pushback on this. And then Bobby Cannavale calmed me down. He goes, you know what I like about these three dads? He goes, they're not malicious. They're just idiots. And that's kind of there was never like when we said dumb stuff in the movie, it wasn't, we weren't doing it on purpose to offend somebody. It was that we didn't know. There was this massive generation gap because we had kids later in life. And that's kind of, and then they sort of learned and sometimes the women were right, sometimes they're wrong. So I like making movies like that. And I got to find somebody that wants to do that either in this town or outside of this town. And I just look at it like I got in this business. I didn't get in this business to make a ton of money. I got in this business to have fun.
Yeah.
And the number one thing that is important to me is that people watch my stuff and they have a positive reaction and think like that's real. That's how people are. That's how people talk. Like that is way more important to me than, coming up with something like, oh, we could make this into like this is what do they call not a sequel, like
the Marvel Universe kind of
multiverse type thing. Yeah.
Well, I'm old. Yeah. I was going to say Friday the 13th, but like
franchise.
Franchise. That's it. Franchise. That's the word you're looking for.
I want people to watch movies, laugh their ass off, and do what you say and saying, I know a guy like this, or I've done something like that. Like if we can achieve that, I get a real high out of that. As opposed to just, because I guess, the numbers don't mean anything out here anymore.
29.6 million views in 10 days. That's crushing it, though.
Yeah. I'm curious about this new project. Are you planning on directing that as well? And I'm curious about the challenges that directing presents, and how you came into that role.
I came into that role because we were coming out of COVID and no directors were available because whatever they were supposed to shoot during COVID, they didn't shoot. And then they had their next project. So they were all backed up and people kept saying, Bill, you should direct it.
Wow.
You wrote the script. And I go, I didn't. I co-wrote it. And I go, yeah, but it's your voice. And I was like, I'm not doing all of that. That's too much work. I have ADD. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to act in this thing and be the dancing, clown here. And then they started going, all right, well, it's going to go away. It's going to go away. And then, out of the just having, if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen. I just said, okay. And I don't remember 2022 after the second I said, okay, put it that way. But now I feel like I have a team in place that, this next time around when I go to do it, it's not going to be, like I had no idea what it meant to say I want to direct. And I had no idea that it meant every single question on set has to be answered by you, essentially.
You the man.
Not as far, like obviously the stunt stuff and all that is handled by the stunt department and all that. But like, as far as like, I always tell this story, like when I knew I was in over my head, the scene designer, whatever you call him, came
set designer.
Set designer. And she goes, hey, this scene, you're having a barbecue. Are we thinking paper plates? And I was like, yeah, paper plates. And she goes, what kind of paper plates? And I was like, geez. Oh my God, what have I got myself into? It's like, whatever you get at the grocery store, who like thinks about that,
Tell folks about, you got your tour, Bill Burr Live coming up. You're going to be at arenas and theaters, man. Dude, you're going to be rocking. It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of how I like to do it now. I like arenas all look the same.
Right.
It's fun. It's an ego boost to do it, but like, there's certain times, I just went to Phoenix and I did like 4 days in a theater. I got to hang out. I got to, I'm big on like hanging with, cigar bar is a great place to kind of get the temperature of the town. I played a couple rounds of golf. I only do 9 holes. I'm a ginger, man. I can't be out there longer than that,
Hats, baby. Hats.
You know what? I'm a par 3 guy. You find a par 3 golf course, that's
we
9 holes in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Fun, man.
We got one
like
in Seattle.
In Seattle, I'm not a country club guy.
Understood. And let's see, you were in Seinfeld's film playing JFK. You was a Boston area guy.
Mm-hmm.
What did that feel like playing JFK in that show?
Well, what's funny is everybody thinks that if you're from Massachusetts, you have some sort of connection with the Kennedys, and like, it's really like they don't they live in a different universe.
No doubt.
Right down to the way they talk. Everybody's like, oh, you were able to do the sort of the Kennedy thing because you grew up in Massachusetts. It's like, dude, they're the only ones that talk like, and it was just that generation. It's not like the young, like, RFK Jr. doesn't talk like that, but like Bobby, Ted, and Jack sort of had, and it was like an aristocratic English accent, which with the Boston accent, with talking to the Illuminati. That's like what it was. So it was funny. Like when they did the side-by-side picture, I saw how people couldn't quite, because I shaved the beard off, and then I have the same kind of square but round head. Like my head looks round, but if you put that big fake wig on, it starts to get more of that square thing. And they gave me the period correct suit or whatever. It was it's like any acting gig I do. I'm always going like this when it comes out, and then when people give good feedback, I'm like, okay, thank God, because just like with stand-up, I'm still learning a bunch of stuff with stand-up.
Wow. Like what? What kind of new stuff have you picked up?
All right. Well, I just did a run Columbus, Nashville, Winston-Salem.
Right.
And Columbus, I could do my thing. Nashville, semi-do my thing. Winston, I had to switch it up. And it all was just how fast I was talking. Because I was going deeper into Columbus is Midwest. So that was fine. And then I went to Nashville. There's a lot of transplants there, but there's also, Nashville is the New York City of Tennessee. So there's a good mix of people there. Then I got to Winston-Salem, and I noticed immediately, I was like, I'm talking too fast here. They can't understand what I'm saying with my accent and how fast I'm talking. I should slow it down a little bit. And then I was able to lock in with them. And it ended up being my favorite show. They were all fun, but that was my favorite show because I felt, there's this fun thing of being able to connect with people that are different than you are. And they had a great sense of humor about themselves and everything, which, I made fun of where I was from and all of that. Like I always make sure, like, I go, what's funny about racism is they always try to act like all the white racism is in the South and it's in Boston, Massachusetts, which I don't need to tell you that's not the truth. But for some reason, like there's no way to do any story on Boston without bringing up busing from 50 years ago.
60.
And it's like, all right, yeah. I mean, okay, that like, yeah, it's definitely an overtly racist place. I don't know what it's like now, because I moved away 30 years ago and I'm white, so I'm not really going to experience it. But I've had some of the wildest stuff people have said to me. I'm not going to rat out towns, but it's just like,
oh, go ahead,
north,
come on.
Well, listen, dude, Buffalo, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee. And I'll even say like, and then there's this weird liberal racism that there is, where they like that Trading Places movie.
Oh yeah.
Where like, we'll take a black guy from the inner city and give him white experience, and then he'll just be a doctor, right? There's a racism to that.
Agreed.
where they say if black people had white people's opportunity, automatically they would just be these great people. Why? Because white people are great people? In a way, you're saying all white people are saints, and we're clearly not. So it's like, okay, so that drug dealer could become a doctor, or he could become a predatory banker, because that's what white people are doing. Some of us are good people, some of us aren't. And then my last favorite thing that racist white people say is that black people are prone to violence, which is hilarious to me. It's like, well, if they're prone to violence, then what are we? Like, how many genocides do they have under their belt versus us? I would say, if we're talking titles here.
It's a shutout.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
a shutout.
Like, but then also,
too.
I always say to black people, like, white people are not evil. What you're seeing is human beings with unchecked power. This is what happens, which is why there needs to be checks and balances. Like, it's like when women go, if women ran the world, there'd be no problems. Yes, there would be, because the sociopaths of women would ascend the ladder, because it's somewhere along the line when it comes to gaining power, decent human beings go, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to do what it takes to get to that. So they tap out. So then that's when you get all the lizard shapeshifter people. Blue ties and red ties, man. They're all out of their minds. They're out of their minds.
Oh, God. Unbelievable. So you won't be moving your family to Boston, right? Boston area.
Listen, I got to tell you something right now. LA is one of the most racist places you'd ever go to. I mean, how many riots do they have to have? Every time the Lakers win a championship, within 15 minutes, a police car is upside down and on fire. Now, my people go, look at them. They're animals. That's how they look at it. If you're a little more, informed, it's like, that is an expression of their relationship with cops. They fucking hate them. Because
I noticed.
Not because they're doing illegal shit. It's the amount of them that aren't, that are being treated like they are. That's what that is an expression of. Same thing with Canada. Canada acts like, oh, it's all these happy white people making syrup. If they lose a playoff series, they have a mini riot going on. Now, I haven't figured out what white upsetment in Canada is about, but there's something going on up there beyond syrup and hockey.
When Vancouver lost, did they do anything up there the other day when they lost?
I don't know that they did, because they lost. Did they lose to Edmonton?
Yeah, Edmonton won. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's Canadian on Canadian.
On Canadian,
it's still a chance for them to bring the first cup there in 31 years.
Yeah.
So I think they just collectively, begrudgingly, will get behind the team because they're Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I can't speak for another country. I have no idea what goes on up there.
Red Sox. Before we go, Red Sox. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I didn't have, my hopes were not that high this year, because we were a mediocre team last year, and I thought we just made lateral moves. However, very quietly, our starting pitching staff is amazing.
Really good.
Our defense has gotten better. We've stopped getting picked off. We were horrible base running. I feel like the bullpen can figure something out, or maybe we pick somebody up. I mean, the amount of times, I'm an old guy. I like listening to it on the radio, right? So the amount of times we've had like a 3-1, 4-1 lead, and I got to shut it off, whatever, make dinner or get the kids, ready for bed. And I come back and it's like 4-4 in the ninth, to start, like Tanner Houck loses the decision or whatever. I like, I still like where our team is. And I got to be honest with you. You're not a baseball fan if you can't sit through a bad season. All right.
I've sat through a bunch, pal. I grew up in some bad Philly years before you were even born.
Yeah.
And I've had
but
some
as far
bad
as like the
Seattle.
Red Sox Yankees thing, ESPN will never admit this, but that's over. And it ended in 2004. Because what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Are we really going to catch up to 27 championships?
No.
We're not. Are they going to chant 2018 at us? They're not. It's over. Roll credits. I love that the Orioles are great. I would like to see them win it, because I remember those great Oriole teams from the 70s and 83.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that guy, that hillbilly guy would get on the dugout and he would he'd spell it all out. Yeah, I think it's good. It was great for the NBA last year when the Nuggets won. I got a nickname for the Boston Celtics. The starting five, I call them the introverts. Like, there's no fist pumping. There's no nothing. Like, I can't figure them out. I can't tell if they got that reptilian, cold-blooded Kobe thing going on. I don't know what's going on, but like, put it this way, they're not miking up anybody on the Celtics to hear all the wacky things they say. It's always like, they had somebody mic'd up that Halliburton guy. What a funny last name.
Therese, yeah.
Dude, that guy hit a three-pointer last. This is how good the shooters are now in their generation. He hit a three-pointer. He was standing on our mascot.
Yep.
Like, I mean, he was still on the other side of the court, but he was like, as they say in aviation, a beam to like the last third of our logo and nothing but net. And it's like when I was a kid, Curly Neal on the Globetrotters did that against the Washington Generals. This
Good call. Good call.
So my thing is when people say like LeBron's the Jordan, it's like he's not. What Jordan did, you have to change the game. And what Jordan did was he made an entire generation of people think that I don't need to pass it to a big man. I don't even need a big man. I can win without him. So there was a lot of individualism came into the league for a while before I would say the Sacramento Kings came around and showed you that it's still a team sport before they got screwed by that mobbed up ref, right?
Remember it well.
I would say the Jordan of this era, as far as the guy that changed the game, is Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter I've ever seen, and he's made an entire generation. This kid's in junior highs.
Oh, they're launching from the parking lot.
They're launching from half court, and they're learning how to do that. So now, like, I mean, this stuff now where nobody's underneath. And, I'm watching some guy 6'10", 7 feet, like draining 3-pointers. Do you know where that comes from? I blame that on the Dream Team. They so embarrassed the European players, and they were like, all right, listen, we're not going to out-jump those black guys as, 7-foot Germans. We got to think of something else. The next thing you know, and the best big man shooter I saw, and it was just from the top of the key, who was just lights out. I hate to say it as a Celtics fan, was Bill Lambier. Bill Lambier, that top of the key shot.
That's
and it was funny. He barely got off the floor, and his hands just went like this.
Right.
Just
you couldn't get a credit card under his shoes.
Yeah, and it was a swish every time.
It was money. He and Charles Oakley were money from that spot every time.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Charles Oakley was at that party, too, at Caroline's. I remember that.
Nice.
Hey, he's Mr. New York, man. Hey, Bill. Hey, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, Bill Burr, fellas, we finally got a chance to sit down with him. I'd met him at the Pro Bowl years ago. And that was in Hawaii. That was a while ago. We went backstage. Your mom and I went backstage to see him in Phoenix a few years ago. It was a good dude. Tell you what, he opened up a couple of veins there. Felt like he was on the couch. He was quite revealing with a lot of things in his life.
It was just surreal to talk with him face to face, albeit on Zoom. But it was everything I expected and more, having been a long time listening to his podcast. So we hit all the hot button topics, including the Federal Reserve. We had to get that one in there too, which he always loves going to.
Yeah. Listen, I was really shocked that he didn't go to population control. That was the only thing that, having listened to everything Bill's done, that he didn't touch on that. I really enjoyed the conversation about his sort of coming to grips with who he was and what he needed to get over in his past in order to move forward, let the anger go. Thought that was awesome. Jordy, I was trying to get you to talk about your ayahuasca trip in Costa Rica with the ayahuasca having visions about you.
That's correct.
I really wanted you to what is it?
Dad, you said ayahuasca. Dad corrected you. He said ayahuasca.
He just corrected me on
ayahuasca. Get used to it. Get used to it.
Slow clap.
Hey, Bill Burr, thanks for your time, my man. And we will continue to tune into your work, and love seeing you around the country. For the Sims fellas, I'm Dave Sims. We'll see you next week here on Hey Now.